things. The first question is, what do I do if I do not have a media team member? Another question we receive often is, how do I recruit for my team? Or what am I looking for, once I am in the middle of that interview process? And then also, thirdly, how do I train my team members once I have them on board for media relations? So my hope is that whatever your background and whatever skill set you're coming into this conversation with today, that each person would be able to take away something that we could implement this season when it comes to selecting, onboarding, and equipping your team as leaders. So let's talk about the media ministry team, the actual roles that make that up. And you guys, I'm sure, are familiar with this, but we just want to start from square one for this conversation today. So the role of the media volunteer is to work with traditional media. And so that means print and radio and television. So there are two media-related roles on the area team, of course. First, we have the media coordinator, who is really responsible for managing the entire team. And of course, the media coordinator who does not have any team members may choose to cover, all of the mediums, print, radio, TV, or do what they can based on the team size. Ultimately, the coordinator's goal is to recruit team members to do the outreach work. Secondly, we have the media team member, who reports directly to the media coordinator and is generally responsible for one portion of media outreach, like radio or print. If the team member is on a team without a coordinator or without other team members, they may choose to handle additional portions. For example, they may work on radio and choose to let me, the SRMC, handle print and television, or they may choose to handle radio and print and have me handle television. And sometimes the team member is handling all three, but really we just want to be respectful of kind of what they've come on board to do and work those boundaries out within the team. So recently, your leadership team and I were able to meet and just discuss the importance of media team members covering their entire area team for whatever specialty area they're focused on, whether it be print, TV, and or radio. So in a situation where they're covering all three mediums, like print, radio, and TV, if that's not doable by one or two people, that might make up that team, we discussed the option where a media volunteer is covering only radio for the entire area team, or only TV and radio for the entire team. So the importance here is just, the big idea was really just clear lines of communication for coverage, so that I, in my role, can come in and kind of fill those gaps. So obviously, it's ideal to have a full media team. So we just pray that as you faithfully, recruit for this particular position and this team, that the Lord will bring the right people to fill those spots. However, most area teams do not have a full media team right now. So the first question being, what do I do if I do not have a media team? Let's talk about that a little bit from the perspective of you all as an area coordinator. What do you do when you don't have media team members? So going back to my role, aside from providing support and equipping through trainings and resourcing, kind of like this opportunity that we're in the middle of right now, my role is also to step in for area teams without media volunteers. Since my southeastern super region kind of includes, Kentucky down to Florida, Puerto Rico, and Arkansas over to the Carolinas, that amounts to about 138 teams. So my ability to provide year-round support for media there is obviously limited. However, I will send your local media outlets the most important ministry news, such as National Collection Week information in the drop-off location release. I will send the National Collection Week release. And as I'm able and as time allows, I also hope to be able to send the Build a Shoebox online release, which is what gives those local collection numbers right as soon as possible. And I'll cover any speaker tours or large kind of community packing parties as time allows. But really, I'm focused on those core four that Brandon alluded to, which, again, we're speaking right now about teams that do not have a media team member. So for your areas, what you can expect from me is to definitely cover your drop-off location release for your area, also to definitely cover your National Collection Week release, and then as time allows, your Build a Shoebox online release and your letter to the editor that goes out before the end of January. So I just wanted to be clear about what you can expect from me if you do not have media volunteers. If you have additional media stories kind of brewing outside of those main 4 releases, and you want to know about my ability to support those, it will sort of depend on the size and scale of the event and whether I have the capacity, to cover that for you. So be in touch with your leadership and they can get with me about whether that's something I can cover. We've also kind of identified some strategic areas that I will be pouring my time into this year. So, and I want to give you a quick example of the kind of amazing stories that you might hear in your local area, and the things that sometimes we take it for granted. I want to encourage you to keep your ear out for these local stories that can go national at times. One example was Faith Russell from Maryville, Tennessee. She organized a pack-in party, and she was aiming to pack about 300 boxes. Well, Faith has spina bifida, and she has been really outspoken about her passion for Operation Christmas Child. So her story is really just a story of perseverance in the face of hardship, and it has that angle of giving back. So these are the types of stories that we're looking for to cover locally, and sometimes what happens, as in the case of Faith, it ended up on NBC Nightly News late last year, and someone who saw that from Keller Williams, actually the CEO, Mo Anderson, saw that on the NBC Nightly News, and it captured the heart of the people at Keller Williams. And so now they are partnering this year with Faith to reach her 20,000 shoebox goal that she's spoken about for years. And really, as an organization, they're aiming to pack 200,000 shoeboxes. But for sure, they're going to help make sure Faith meets her 20,000 shoebox goal this year. So it's a very local story that turned national and has even that bigger impact this year. So do let us know about your story ideas that they're brewing kind of outside of those main releases that we talked about, because you never know what can happen with those. So again, for those of you who do not have media volunteers, want to just emphasize the fact that that doesn't mean that media relations becomes the job of the area coordinator. Okay, many area teams do not have media volunteers as a part of their team. We do not ask area coordinators to step in as the media volunteer for their teams if they do not have that role yet filled. We know there's so much that you are juggling and you're leading, and I am here to be that intermediary kind of support until God brings that right fit for your team. So while I cannot necessarily focus on every event or media request, my hope is that you'll at least see some fruit and some media successes through those main releases that I do send out for your area. And again, those basic 4 are your drop-off location release that goes out a couple weeks before National Collection Week, the National Collection Week release that goes out right at the start of National Collection Week and says, reminder, it's happening right now. It's a great tip for those camera crews to come out and get the visuals and the bright colored boxes and the kids helping kids all at your drop-off locations, right? And then, of course, that also includes the BASBO, Build a Shoebox Online when I'm able, and the letter to the editor if I'm able. Beyond that, there are some newsworthy local events going on that I'm not able to cover for you. And so as an AC, if you still are choosing to step into the media relations efforts for those additional events, reaching out on your own, I'm well aware that so many of you have great relationships locally, and it's something that you enjoy doing. If you've gone through the basic training that we offered the last 3 months, that's okay, as long as your regional point of contact is aware and is okay with you guys doing that based on your other responsibilities and kind of capacity and priorities. So let me briefly, when we're talking about special stories, mention a note of direction just about press releases and approval processes. Media outlets use a certain style called Associated Press style guidelines. It's kind of the rule book for journalism, professionalism, and industry etiquette when it comes to the way we write news stories. So this style is very specific. And for that reason, if you do not have a media team and you're still wanting to send something to the media yourself, I just ask that you, we ask that messaging on the media releases first just be submitted to your regional point of contact for a second editing eye. And I can take a look at that as well before they go out. We do provide templates, templated releases. And so your first point is going to be to use those templated releases. But if anything is not templated, send those to me to just have a quick look. I'll do my best not to hold that up for you. But there's also a few kind of just things that we're looking out for nationally. And so that'll give me a chance to speak into that and keep us from walking into something unintentionally. For those of you that do have media team members, media volunteers are not required to send those templated releases to me for approval, okay? So if they're using their templates already, unless they really change it to the point that it's really not a template anymore, if they're using the templates, they don't need to send those to me. So as long as they're sticking to the messaging there, we only ask that someone, serve as a second eye for them, just because we all have the tendency to leave off a period or forget to capitalize something, or we want to make sure our goal numbers are correct and names are spelled correctly. So having a second set of eyes is always a good idea for all of us, including myself. If you guys find that there is kind of a unique story you have that you don't have a template for, again, reach out to your regional point of contact and myself, and we can go in the right direction to get kind of something working that will fit for your story idea. I really do love seeing your special story ideas. A lot of times when I don't have the capacity to develop it, it'll be the kind of thing where you pitch me the idea and I say, great, write that up, do the interview, get those quotes together, and I'll still edit that before you use it. But just getting involved in that process together will work well. So that kind of speaks to what do you do if you do not have a media team. Secondly, how do you recruit for media volunteers, or more specifically, what are you looking for when you're in the middle of the interview process? Some of you may have seen the handout that we provided at Connect if you were able to be with us in Atlanta this year. If you didn't get that, don't worry, we can provide that to you in a follow-up. I'm going to send that to Shelly and the team so they can email that out to everybody. But as a coordinator, you're probably already familiar with the resources on the extranet, where you can dive into more resources on recruiting and selecting volunteers. But we just wanted to go in depth a little more on that, because our team has found that area coordinators are often, and understandably, just a little uncertain about what specific qualities they're needing to look for, what specific questions they're needing to ask in the middle of recruiting and selecting a media volunteer. So for example, when you're looking at a media volunteer prospect, it's helpful to find someone who's reliable, personable, detail-oriented, persistent, someone who's a self-starter. So some of these words seem sort of, that's understood, but really to be reliable, really to be kind of a timely, responsive person. Independent people tend to do well in this role. So those are some characteristics that are available on the handout that Shelly and team can pass your way. When you sit down and you're interviewing the media volunteer, a few things to look for in particular. Maybe you ask the questions like, would this person be comfortable calling media contacts on the phone and quickly giving a concise story or an event pitch? Maybe you ask them, what excites you about promoting Operation Christmas Child to the media? Because you really are looking for someone who's passionate and willing to learn, but you're also looking for someone who has the skill set to really excel in the role. You don't want somebody coming into the role who is just going to make them a nervous wreck every time they try to make a phone call. And I've encountered those people. They might have great organizational skills and a golden heart, but you know what? We're not all equipped with the same skills and characteristics, and that's okay. What a boring role it would be, right? So just knowing if the things they need to do, if they're going to be comfortable making those calls, reaching out and being persistent, and if they're going to be able to do that in a detailed and organized way and still be personable and still be reliable. Okay. If you want some more guidance on recruiting and selecting, there's more of an in-depth tool that Shelly and team has access to. Goes in more depth on proficiencies and ideal characteristics for the role. So talk with the team about that to get your hands on that more in-depth tool if you need that. Some of those more specific skills are things like using Microsoft Word to be able to open attachments, to be able to customize and unhighlight the text in the press release templates, and being able to copy and paste the text into email formats that are appropriately formatted. Those are all vital for that role. The media volunteer will also need to be able to use Microsoft Excel to look at media lists, being able to use those lists to filter and kind of make decisions, strategic decisions on of the options I've provided, which contacts they want to reach out to. And then also being able to use email professionally. They need to understand the scope of their responsibility and just be able to have that professional correspondence with local media, using the approved templates, staying connected and informed about the tasks that are going on in their area, and then just completing the press release projects according to the yearly timeline. And so those are just kind of, in a nutshell, that's sort of a glance at the kind of person we're looking for and some of the essential proficiencies and characteristics that have shown time and time again to make for a really great media volunteer. When we talk about media, a lot of people think about social media, so I want to make a brief mention of social media. The media relations volunteer role is focused, like we said earlier, on traditional media, which means TV, print, and radio. Even though your team may have a social media or as a new focus, it's not a central component to the role itself, because what we've really been sharing this year, just kind of as we shift this paradigm, this way of thinking, is social media is something we can all take part in on a daily basis. So as most of you know, one forum that we see a lot of teams using to share and communicate internally is the Facebook group. So just a reminder, the approved policy is that groups are good. Groups are great. You can feel free to use groups for that internal communication with your team. We realize that is a really supportive method of communication for, kind of effective, efficient communication for most teams. So we're supportive of that, but not pages, okay? Pages are not the same as groups. So think of those G's going well together. Groups are good. And then focus on, as you focus on kind of recruiting and crafting media strategy for the year with your volunteers, just please keep in mind that we ask for this role to be filled with traditional media outreach efforts. So while social media can be an added responsibility or an added role to an already full media volunteer team, we don't want members to just be solely focused on social media platforms and not reaching out to their local media outlets or missing the opportunities that come through local media, through traditional print, TV, and radio. Okay, we're going to have hopefully a couple minutes at the end for some questions, so be jotting down things that might come to mind. We've already made it to our third big question, okay? So this next question is, how do I train new media volunteers? So another resource we created and rolled out for Connect that we can give you guys access to now is the top 10 tips. So this is about, what happens once you've recruited and selected your volunteer? How do you equip them to be successful in their role? So this document is, 10 things that you can do as their leader to kind of get them going in the right direction. The first thing that each media volunteer should do would be to request a media list, and I have that available. I can send out upon request. That's one way that I'm sort of tracking which volunteers are really engaged, which areas are covered, and that gives me a good baseline to understand where I need to come in and fill in some gaps, So encourage media volunteers to take that list and to just do some additional research about outlets that are on the list. It really is simply just a framework to start out with. And sometimes additional investigation on the best contacts is helpful. But the list is a great starting point, especially to get an overview of which outlets are there and a few names of people that work at each of those outlets and what their roles are, kind of what some of their preferences are, how they prefer to be reached, some of the topics they like to cover. So there are a few things I just want to highlight briefly from the top 10 tips. Obviously, we talked about the list. One of the first things you're going to have them do also is to download their handbook from the extranet and also download the toolkit. Now, the 2016 toolkit has been a little delayed in getting posted. We're hoping any day the 2016 messaging will be available. It's at that last final stage of approval with headquarters, so it should be up any day and available for new templates. So the toolkit is that folder basically on the extranet that has all of your press releases and email pitches and fact sheets that has everything related to media. All the 2015 messaging is still up. So if you have something right on the brink that you're trying to use, feel free to use that since it's the latest approved messaging, but also send it to me before you use it so I can update numbers and stats to be the most up-to-date stats for you this year before it goes out to the media. And of course, that's all on the extranet under downloadable resources. A couple of tools that you have access to share with your media teams in the handbook, in the media handbook on page 38. There is an area profile worksheet that I want to draw your attention to. This is just a great place to quickly reference all of the key things about the area team that they might be asked throughout the season. So this worksheet is a place that early in the season, like right now, your media volunteers can go ahead and be filling out who are my key volunteers in the area that would be available for interviews. What are our area team goal numbers? What did we collect last year? What are we trying to collect this year? what collection sites or relay sites would I love to send a journalist to should they give me a call? So say your media volunteer is at their day job, their regular day job, and they get a call from the release they sent out, and it's a journalist wanting to hop over for an interview at the local site nearby or the local volunteer who might be available. Well, your volunteer who's been in the middle of their job has to switch gears mentally, and it'd be really great if they have that worksheet ready to just reference so that all those details and stats are right there at the tip of the tongue, just to be shared with the contact over the phone. So that's a great tool. Again, it's in the handbook on page 38. Just a good kind of catch-all to keep things organized. The second resource in the handbook I wanted to make sure you're familiar with as you're leading your volunteer team is the Year at a Glance worksheet from page 6. Year at a Glance is really just the timeline, or the media relations cycle, as we call it. So it's telling you which releases should be going out at which times throughout the year. We covered those big four, those core four already, which is your drop-off locations a couple weeks before National Collection Week. It's your National Collection Week release right at the start of the week, and it's the BASBO right after, and then letter to the editor before the end of January. But those things are detailed more in the Year at a Glance tool on page 6. The rest of the tools that are available in the toolkit are really supporting documents that they're available, they're templates that are available based on events that you guys are having or other optional things that you might have going on. So the final resource I want to point out in the handbook is your frequently asked questions section, 56 through 61. So pages 56 through 61. This is your FAQ. This document is a great starting point just to think about those common questions and how would we answer them as a team. How would we be prepared to answer them? So these are messaging that we've already taken the time to write out an appropriate response that's reflective of the love of Jesus, that's reflective of the heartbeat of the organization we're representing, and that's accurate, that's transparent, and that's also consistent wherever and whenever we are called upon to give these answers nationwide. So it's a great idea for all volunteers to be well prepared for answering these questions, any questions the public may ask or the media, right? So the 2016 fact sheet is also available that can come in that follow-up email. And that's just a great place to get your updated stats and just the way that we say things, some of the phrases, the way we talk about the organization. Again, so we're all kind of sounding like the same unified voice nationwide. All right, so want to make you aware that as we communicate throughout the season, there might be times when you and I work directly, but if that happens, if there are unique situations where that happens, and you'll always see me copying in your regional point of contact, because we really strive to follow this high impact process, and I want to make sure that everybody's in the loop. So if you're going to message, if you want to email me about something specifically, if you've gone through your regional leadership, and you still want to reach out to me, just be sure to keep them in the loop so that everybody's on the same page, and we're just consistently communicating that way. Okay, one more resource I want to share with you is the newsroom. So it is really helpful for you guys to be familiar with the newsroom. It's SamaritansPurse.org/OCC newsroom. This is not the same as the regular Operation Christmas Child website. Okay, so I know everybody's gone to the website, but have you gone to the newsroom? This is where you find the downloadable photos, videos, public service announcements, different things like that, our high resolution logo. These are all tools that are available for media contacts. And the newsroom was created as an external resource for media contacts. So I encourage you just to visit that, SamaritansPurse.org/OCC newsroom, and favorite that or bookmark that so that it's a quick reference for you. All right, I want to talk about training resources coming up, and I want to talk about tracking our media hits, and then we're going to open it up for some questions, okay? So about 5 more minutes, and we're going to break for some questions. Training resources, our team is just really excited, you guys, because we look at the existing materials, we see the value in what's already there, but we just really felt like we had the opportunity to reorganize some of that content. And so we're working to reorganize the handbook content and hopefully roll that out by the end of the year. We just had a meeting last week with volunteer relations that might shift around sort of the timeline of that. But the idea is we want to make the training materials more bite-sized, kind of easier to digest, and we're going to do something mind-blowing, which is add a table of contents, so that if you or your team members are looking for a specific answer to a question you have, hopefully you can find that by topic on the table of contents. You've also heard by now that we had our basic trainings in May, June, and July. And so the basic trainings are over. What I want to draw your attention to now is August 18th. We are hosting a training at the lunch hour and also the evening hour for 2 different options. And the August 18th training is going to be all about diving into the specifics of those releases we talked about, the core 4, and making sure that our media volunteers have the chance to come together and have a very clear understanding of how to succeed with those releases, what steps to follow, and just really get a unified game plan together so everyone's on the same page as we really start off the season on the right foot. So encourage you guys to get the word out to your media team members and coordinators about the August 18th trainings. And there will be the 2 different time options for that again. Okay. We're also excited because along with the handbook updates I was mentioning, we're starting the conversations of what does it look like to update the e-learning that goes along with that. So, big point of feedback that I brought home from my office visit with the regional staff there in Atlanta was, whatever we can do to make this just really a cohesive, streamlined experience. So we've really just taken that to heart, and we're working to do that over the next year or so. Okay, so our last topic for today is about tracking. So media hits and year-end reports. It's everyone's favorite topic, right? Everyone loves reports. But the last thing I want to cover is about the opportunity that we have with media hits. So what does it mean when we talk about a hit? This can be a print news story that appeared in publication or even online. It could be a radio interview or a PSA or DJs talking on air. It could be a television story or a mention on a news show. Media hits, except for radio, they're all assigned a publicity value, and the value is a dollar amount. And so, for example, TV is usually our highest dollar amount. So if you had to pay for it, it's kind of giving us the equivalency of what you'd have to pay for it. But of course, we don't pay for it. We earn this coverage. So, for example, a story published in a small town paper is going to have less publicity value than a 1-minute television spot in like a large, center of Atlanta. And so, as you might imagine, it will kind of come out that way. That TV would deliver the highest publicity value. Personally, I don't put a lot of stock in. I think it's important that we evaluate publicity value, but I think of every reader and viewer and listener, every time that we have an impression like that through the media channels, that's one more person that might encourage their entire family to pack one more box, and that's one more kid. So we want to celebrate those successes. We want to hear every time that comes across. So we track these hits through a clipping service, a subscription service, and the name of that service is Cision. And so through Cision, I'm able to see any print and television and online successes that we were able to have. Now, I do get those, but I also love hearing from you, hey, we did have this run, so I can double check that Cision picked that up for us. But notice I didn't say radio. So unless I hear from you about radio, I don't know anything about it. So radio, again, could be anything from PSAs to DJs talking about us on air. So just let me know as detailed and accurately as you can. And I'm excited that we have a new radio database where all that material, all the information is being compiled, which will continue year over year to kind of inform our strategy, keep us on the same page about progress we're making with stations, hopefully help us carry relationships over, and have fewer people reaching out to one station so that we're not duplicating efforts. So love hearing that from you guys. Looking forward to hearing all the successes that you're going to have this year, and just encourage you to share with your team ways to keep the information flowing through for the reporting for media hits. So that's all I have for you now. Thank you for bearing with me with all of the information overload there. I want to just take a moment and see what did we talk about that you guys may have some more questions about. Maybe what did we not talk about that you would like to ask a question about. I'm going to go through and unmute everyone just to make sure I can hear you. Going through one by one. Okay, everybody should be unmuted now, so if you want to speak, I should be able to hear you.
Dana, this is Roxy. Can you hear me?
Hi, Roxy. I sure can.
Since I don't have a media team and I understand the role does not fall directly on me, but I still feel like I should be doing something, should I go to the newsroom and try to gather some of that information and give it to you?
Well, yeah, I mean, I have access to the newsroom. So the newsroom materials that our departments at headquarters and our media team have worked to make available to you guys. The big thing for your area, obviously, you continue to prayerfully recruit and select. On my end, I continue to make sure that your drop-off location information is going out. So hopefully your papers will pick that up for you when I send it out. I make sure that your national collection week goes out, and hopefully there'll be some interest there where somebody wants to come by and do an interview at the drop-off location. So I cover those for you. I also have a list of, in August, you guys will see either sometime this week that Shelly and the team have sent out an email to you guys that says August Focus. Every month you're going to get this from us. It's going to say, here's the media focus for this month. Right now the focus is for in my world, in August, one of my efforts will be to reach out to radio stations that have expressed an interest. Now, what it means that they have expressed an interest is that we have access to some resources at a call center that made some calls for us to the stations we gave them a list of. And if they said, yeah, send me the PSAs, sure, send them my way. That doesn't mean they're going to play them, right? But they might. So I'm going to respond to those people who positively responded, and I'm going to follow up with more information about maybe they see if they really are running the PSA, see if they'd be interested in local interviews. So if there's stations that responded positively in your area, they'll be on my list for follow-up in August. So that's one other effort that's happening. I really, more than anything, would say for you and your role to just be prayerful about that and ask the Lord to also send those surprises. You know, He knows what you have on your plate, and that media is not a core component of that as an AC, but that He knows the contacts. And so I'm just praying when I send these releases as well that the Lord will bless them, that we'll see yeses, that we'll see people responding to these coverage opportunities, and that even in the areas where we don't have a lot of volunteer support on those ministry teams for media, that we'll just still see God's favor and blessings, even despite an election year, right? So really, no, there's not anything else that you should be doing. If you see an opportunity and you feel that there is an opportunity we should pursue, and it's outside of a template or it's outside, then feel free to use the templates if it's appropriate. If you have a local thing going on, get a set of eyes on it. If it's outside a template, let me know. You can still, if you have the capacity to do that, you can still pursue that. I just don't want you to feel the responsibility of it.
Okay. I appreciate it. Thank you, Dana.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else? I'm going to turn it back over to you, Brandon. Thank you, guys.
Well, and I'll jump in just a second. Hey, Dana.
Hey.
This is Shelley. Just wanted to say, just a brief reminder, we had sent out a radio survey to y'all when we sent out this call reminder. So if you'll just take a few minutes to fill that out by tomorrow, that would be great and really helpful to Dana. And then Dana mentioned some resources that we have available. And so I'm going to send out just a brief recap of this call this afternoon, and I'll attach those resources for y'all on that as well.
Great. Thank you, Shelly. Everybody, appreciate your time, appreciate your diligence, your efforts, just praying alongside you that the Lord will really just bless our media responses this year, and just really grateful to serve alongside y'all.
Yeah, well, thank you, Dana, and thanks everybody for joining us today. Have a good day.
Bye, everyone.